I say, okay, so this is my thing. So this is some life hack shit or practice hack shit. Depends on what you're practicing. A public practice should be just public practice. It's a tester. That's sparring, in my opinion. Anytime you go to a session, that's sparring. So if you do, for instance, Muay Thai or boxing, let's just take those two elements. There's such thing as pad work and there's such thing as sparring. Your pad work shouldn't be at the session because you could do that by yourself. So for instance, drills.
Why are you
You don't even need music for drills. For technique, you don't need music. You don't need people. You just maybe need a camera and just the time put in for drilling movements, combos, right? At a session, 45 minutes, 2 hours, you can get in like 5-10 rounds of going back and forth, of pressure testing, right? People are watching you. Those are two different types of sessions right there. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But then to drill at a session doesn't make sense. You're wasting your time. Unless it's because you need the pressure testing, right?
Yeah.
So that's why I suggest if you go to a session, you only need 45 minutes.
Carl Paoli really classified and organized this idea very well in regards to growth and progression, right? And whatever you're trying to do.
Yeah.
He said practice is where you're working out the ideas and all that. And training is when you're implementing the ideas. And then you actually have the, what's the last phase of it? I forgot, but basically the application of the idea you developed, how you fine tune the motor control for it, the connectivity, the mind and body connectivity in relation to a dance, right? Rhythmic movement, and then how you apply it, whether it's a performance, a battle, or whatever. So that's kind of what you're saying.
Yeah. It's
a very, very neat way to formulate your training approach, right?
Yeah. Because if you don't have my challenge is you're 4 days a week. If it's driven by music, it's driven by too much emotion. And you're not going to get productivity from that. That's sparring. Anytime there's music, that's sparring because you're interacting versus like you can optimize technique by yourself, right? That's your pad work. That's with the coach. You can't spar. Every session can't be sparring. Or every training shouldn't be sparring because you're only going to get as good as you're going to get. You're never going to go beyond that. Going beyond that is self-reflective and there's no music and analyzing everything. You can't do that in a sparring session necessarily. Maybe after if you filmed it. So I'm just going by fight rules. You know what I'm saying? I'm just going by fight rules. Well,
the first rule of that is you don't talk about it.
That's Fight Club. This is not fight rules.
So, Pro, give me an example, bro. Give me an example of how you use, this segmented approach of what we're talking about. So, give me what's the last move you did.
So there's 3 different things, right?
Yeah.
So one is your conditioning. So that's a totally different. So that's not necessarily practice. That's like conditioning of like, can I, I'm gonna use the kettlebell, and this is all gonna be weight training day. Right? Because every sports has that. They have a day where they weight train. You can go to like football, you could go to basketball. They all have a weight day. So that should be separate. You should have a weight day. You should have one, right? Stretching, weight day, that's a day. Then your next is pad work. You're just working pads. You're working technique. Your flare technique, your air flare technique, your 90 technique, all these different techniques are drilling. You're drilling different movements. Drilling.
Okay, so hold on.
Just memorization. Yeah.
Before we move on, so the first day you're saying conditioning, right? We want control in mobility and range of motion.
Yes. And strength training, all that stuff. Yeah.
Control in range of motion, aka mobility. Right?
Yes.
That's what we're training for. So how conscious are we on a general level of how we're formulating our muscle fibers? aka refining movement patterns that is oriented towards what breaking is, because breaking is pretty darn dynamic, right? There's a lot more going on than what you typically see And when you say weight training, we're loading our bodies, right? We're creating resistance, right? AKA strength.
Yep.
Right. When we overcome the resistance, that's the definition of strength, right? So it's just something to be aware of, you know, for our listeners.
Yep.
Something I remind myself all the time. Hey, this movement pattern that I'm doing, how I get out of my car, how I get out of my bed, how I sit down, okay, how I you know, do the accessory type training. What is it doing to my body in relation to dynamic movement, rotational movement?
Right.
Very, very important to think about. Anyway, continue. So
yeah.
Conditioning, so your body is able to safely and effectively.
Right. Every sport has it. Like, you know, when you start gymnastics, you start out with that. You start out with these conditionings before you even do any movements, any crazy movements like handstands and stuff like that. Then you go for technique, right? Your technique day. And that has nothing to do with pressure testing. You're able to create the muscle memory from these movements. That's a separate day. That should be just a separate day. And you don't need anyone. You could just do it. Maybe you and someone else, and you could just have a camera. This is your form. This is your like, you know, this is not even creative process. This is just, can I get these moves, right? Can I get these moves? Can I get these movements down, locked into my muscle memory where I'm not thinking about it? You know what I mean? So that's a separate practice.
Well, more specific, muscle memory is how we create the chain of muscles that connect to each other, right? To execute a pattern or even a static position, right?
Yep.
A lot of the times we're one activation away from completing a movement.
Yeah.
And, you know, finding ease of movement with that. And that's where style comes in, from ease of movement, right?
Yep.
So you're saying the muscle memory, like, are these things that you work through? Give me an example of the last move you practiced throughout the week, or even sequence.
Air flares. Let's say air flares. Air flares, right? I'm trying to figure it out. I'm trying to like do it from static positions, do it from a spin drills, I'm trying to figure out the feeling and the right activation and the right timing and rhythm. I can't, and I noticed when I did this at a session, I would never get it. There's too many things going on. I can't concentrate. I can't understand my proprioception because there's too many things going on.
Do you ever trace your chain, your kinetic chain, when you're doing this, what you're talking about? You're talking about proprioception, activation. You go slow. Excellent. Right? Breaking down the different segments.
Yes. Yeah.
Do you go, okay, here's the ground. I feel it. You can't see my fingers. I feel it. Here's the force coming up. I have my body weight, my mass that's going down towards it. Do you try and trail the contraction and how it connects and goes all the way to
as much as I can.
That's the process right there.
As much as I can. And that's the whole thing. That's why I can't do it at a session. I'm too distracted. I can only do that in silence. I can only do that when it's like super concentrated.
So here's an idea, right? You're talking about hacking and I love it. You're talking about like, oh, okay, hold on. The typical way and a viable way to do it, little risky, a lot of risky, I should say, right? How we learned is by implementing timing, being guided by a timing metronome, aka a beat. That's when we're trying to add speed to a movement pattern. Dangerous, super dangerous, right? We all get injured.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But the timing does guide people into creating the activations. Now I gotta tighten because I gotta find a way to meet this timing, whether it's conscious or subconscious. If you're trying to hit a beat or you're just like in the rhythm of the funk track, you know what I mean? That is the other way. That is the archaic way. It is a way, but
it's not the best way. It's not the best way, because even when you play music, you don't learn like that. You know what I mean? It's slow.
Subconsciously.
Nah, that's the problem. You have to always be conscious. That's what will create better results, is consciousness in every little movement.
I agree.
You know what I mean?
How do we raise awareness in that?
You take away the romanticism.
How do we make thinking
cool? You take away the romanticism. You take away the freaking. You have to be robots.
I don't want that.
Yes. No, you have to. You have to.
But that means
I'm coming from a deficit. I should be proof of it.
So you're telling me the Batman approach, right? Tactical rather than the
tactical. This has nothing. This is okay. The art comes from the session, not from the science.
Well, it is.
The science part of training is not romantic. It's robotic. It's boring. But that's why I didn't say take away the improvisation. That's all in the session. You still need the session. You just shouldn't be going to sessions 4 times a week. You should be going to a session maybe once a week, maybe twice max. You still need the social thing. You still need all that's important. Well, because it's like this. It's like this. It's like this. If you're going to a boxing, and it's again like fighting. If I were to just do pad work the whole time, when I'm going to go against Tyson, it's not going to work. I'm going to need to spar.
Yep.
But you don't spar at every session. You don't spar at every training. You don't like football players don't go scrimmaging every practice is not a scrimmage. A scrimmage is once in a while, or maybe once a week, maybe twice a week. Because then you have to pressure test. That's the whole point of session. A session is a pressure test. You still need it, but it shouldn't be your predominant way of technique.
For sure. The pressure test is the truth test, right?
Yeah. To see if everything is applied now. But it can't be everything because you're not going to gain as much. You're just not. That's like if I spar every time, you're going to have one good punch. And we need to spar different people, right? And that means different sparring. I equate to music, right? Different music, different thing. But you need the technique first. The whole thing is need the technique first to get there. And this is the hack versus the problem is it's this emotional process because we're artists. Yeah, you don't want to sharpen up your tool brush. You don't want to sharpen up your brush. You don't want to sharpen up your tools because it's going to take longer from the emotion with music. That's big. Again, you're so addicted to the pressure tester and the validation from the outside versus the validation of your body giving you validation. Your body gives you validation through those slow technique practices. You know what I'm saying? Like you're gonna get way more from that than from like, okay, did everyone see that? Did you see that? Did you see that? Because that's what a session is. Did you see that?
Oh, the dopamine from that though, huh?
Exactly. And it's blinding because then, yeah, exactly. You get an adrenaline boost, all that stuff because of the pressure test. But do you really get the technique? The technique is when you come from like a dead state and there's no emotion. If you can hit it with no energy whatsoever, you got it. You got it. And then you could pressure test it. Now it's like, okay, the nerves is actually telling me something else. That's why it's just like, man, you know how many people got fat over COVID? They didn't really want to practice. They wanted the social interaction. So that goes again. We are built on this need from people when you need your body to execute.
Yeah, I do.
I'm very passionate about this because everyone has a, they need a social validation when it's like, no, you don't. Not yet, not in training. You need that after. You could do it. You need the pressure testing. That's why I say I'm not saying that you don't need the sessions. You just don't need to go so much. Okay. You can actually, this is all within the Tim Ferriss, using your time wisely, right? Like using your time wisely versus like you wait, like I said, you go to a session, it's 2-hour session. You're only really getting a good dance in 45 minutes because you're saying what's up to everyone. And then you're still watching everyone. Like, it's not really, you're really like, that's a lot of time wasted versus when you could be like, what you're saying, feeling, you could feel the ground and you could feel this type of stuff. You're gaining this proprioception, this awareness from when you could be by yourself. And then a session, 45 minutes, you say what's up to everyone. All right, you still have 45 minutes. Let's get these rounds in. All right, take your water sip and then go again. And all right, cool, dope. It's pressure tested. I know it's working and I know it's not. Then you go back to the lab again. And then you do it again and then you recycle and then, All of a sudden, you've grown a skill set versus like, you don't know. Like, okay, the reason why I know this is because I noticed that when I did used to train like that, dude, it would take me months to get a move because I'm always around people. Took me months. Why? Because I'm distracted. Why? Because I'm listening to the music. Why? Because
social media seems to be the middle ground with that, right? Like you can film yourself by yourself and you can still get that that social element, right? About
yes,
it. You post it, okay, cool.
Yep.
You get feedback, you get props, whatever it is, right? You still
it's not as real time, right? It's not as real time, but what you get is you get more time of self-reflection, which I think is good. I think it's important. And I don't think a lot of people do it enough. There's and I get it. Like, I was telling Carl, like, it's
Who's
this
Carl
Paoli. Yeah, like
who's Carl Paoli?
He wrote Freestyle, the book. Come on, man! If you've been watching Gearhdz, you know who Carl Paoli is.
Carl Paoli. Everybody look him up and follow him.
Yeah, if you watch Gearhdz enough, we've mentioned that guy way more than once.
Master Carl.
And I was we had a podcast. I got to do it again Monday, but because the sound was bad. But on his freestyle thing,
I'm excited for that.
Yeah. Podcast, so we talked about like breaking is the only craft that's built on uber masculinity and a fatherless, which a lot of creators are from fatherless childhood, where we need this masculine validation.
What about MMA?
What about MMA? They're fighting. You know what I mean? It's just tech. It could, if a true fighter could be just technique, right, and a fearlessness, not this. I have to prove my manhood through movement.
Name one. Go ahead and name one fighter. Let's talk about that.
Okay, GSP.
Okay. Did GSP not get bullied as a kid and had an emotional trauma?
I don't know.
He did. The answer is yes. So I'm just saying, man.
I'm just saying, like, it's like if we go to like most of the, because there's any other art, not just fighting. Again, skating, don't care about biters. Tricking, don't care about bitings.
How do you know?
Because they don't. They're always, because Rodney Mullen made up half of the moves in skating, and he loves it when people use his moves. And if someone did it before him, oh well, I'm gonna flip it. That's Rodney Mullen.
So when you're making that kind of money, it's like, oh yeah.
No, this is before the money. This is like 1982 when he was doing it.
You don't know that.
Yeah, I do.
He was happy that people were doing his ish.
Yeah, because at least he's not alone.
Yeah, well, and they're extending his legacy, right? When somebody does your move.
Yeah, but he would use other people's moves. He did. That's how he started. He had to. Like he created the ground ollie, and dude, he created the kick flip. He created a lot of stuff, and he was just happy when someone was using it.
So he created foundation, right? He was the father of somewhat of a style, huh?
He's the father of street skating. People would say he's the father of street skating, inadvertently, because he was a freestyle skater. But inadvertently, he created street skating, because without those moves, there would be no street skating, right? Because the ground ollie is the thing that gives street skating what it is. You know what I mean? While everyone was doing handstands on the skateboard, he created the ground ollie, and that was able to, like, if you want to jump into a curve, if he didn't create it, then no one could jump into a curve and do a grind, right? So he created a lot of the stuff that is used in street skating, and he's happy about that. But if it was created before him, he wouldn't be upset. That's the thing. He's a true scientist. You gotta check out Rodney Mullen if you want to know someone who is altruistic about his movement.
Is he futuristic about it?
Oh yeah, dude. I mean, he does TED Talks with aerospace engineers, man. Like, he's on that level. He's studied like that. He's an introvert. He practiced by himself in Gainesville, Florida. He never interacted with me. He's an introvert. And he created all this stuff. And I was like, I need to be more like that than like, I'm the fucking man. Oh, I'm going to prove myself. That didn't do shit for me. And it still doesn't. the more I got to Rodney Mullen, the more my skills went up because my ego died.
Yo, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, I just tapped my mic for some reason. Okay, cool. Nice, man. So awesome topic.
Yeah, I mean, we went off a tangent of the thing, but then, if we're talking about training, man, like,
yeah, we're talking about
that's one thing that, like, we haven't really touched upon it, but I think we really went deep, like how to segment your practice with the, like, what I mean, because it's important, because like I said, I learned all of this later. You know what I mean? Because I used to practice exactly what we're talking about. I used to go to like 4 sessions a week, go to all the practices, but my skill set was not getting better. It just wasn't. I was like here for 10 years. I was here. Think about that. And then I noticed when COVID happened, this happened. I was like, oh, why? Because I'm by myself. Oh, why? Because I could pay attention. Oh, why? Then I was like, all right. Then I applied all the other stuff with it, and that made it even go higher. You know what I mean? It went this trajectory went like this with my skill set and my stamina and my training.
Yeah, you're putting yourself in a position. When you say that, I mean, there's a lot to talk about that as well, man. Like being able to train and be motivated by yourself.
Yeah.
You're putting yourself in a position where you're reliant only on it's an internal thing, right?
Yeah.
You don't have outside validation
to
motivate you. You don't have other people blowing it up to give you, kind of that, that chemical release that makes you want to go harder, right?
Yeah.
Cool, now I want to go hard. If you have it within yourself, that is the most reliant and the most consistent source of energy and motivation. So that's important. And now that I'm reflecting, man, I rarely have those because I'm at a point, I'm not competing or nothing like that, but I'm like, oh, okay, man. And it could be my lifestyle and, all the different things I balance. I need to go to a session for me to, if I come home after a long day, I'm like, but at the other end of this resistance that I'm avoiding, I know it's progression and I know it's growth. So thanks for bringing that up, bro.
Yeah, man. No, because we talked about your boy. It all started from the CBD ad. And then your boy going 4 days a week. He's like, why does he have to go 4 days a week? Yeah, that made me question. And you know what? I tell a lot of people that. I tell a lot of people, like, they're like, I practice. I was like, you don't have to. Like, why? You know what I mean?
Well, the reason why, and it's a weird thing. Like once you get to a certain skill level, a high skill level, now it's like, oh, okay, if I get an air flare, if I can't do it every day of the week, I don't feel confident doing it in a battle, which isn't a bad mindset. But there's a mental thing to that, right?
It's not a true statement, though.
No, but there is truth to it. It's not a.
You don't have to do it every day to maintain. You could maintain the muscles to do it.
But in high pressure, if it's something you do every day.
And that's why it's like you have to. But if you were to segment it, you could see it better. You know what I'm saying? Versus this fear of like, oh, I'll lose it.
For sure. Yeah, it's a safer way, and especially when you tie in the visualization, right, to the slow positioning, creating a tiered process to a specific move or, whatever it is. That's
going to be more productive for sure. Like a tiered process. Exactly. It's a process, you know what I mean? Like until it's like introduced into muscle memory.
I challenge you to, you like posting and I like watching because I'm motivated by you, man. I want you to show your tiered process for what you're doing, man, with the air flare.
Okay. I mean, I do it on my stories, right? Like I'm on the grass and you'll see me do it from a handstand. You'll see me try to do it from a swipe. You'll see me try to do it. Okay. You know what I mean? But I mean, yeah.
That would be a good hot take. Boom. Soundbite or us, and then it breaks to that.
Okay, word. Yeah. And that's why I try it from different angles, because if you can get it from different angles, then then you have
a battle too, didn't you?
Yeah, I did it. Yeah.
And then boom, that'll be the last.
and then put it when I did it in a battle.
Yeah.
Word. Yeah,
anyway,
you should see the process. Yeah.
40 minutes later, we have some stuff to talk about. Fathers of Style.
Yo, this is Shadow Rock and ProfoWon.
And this is Jasoul.
And you're watching the Gearhdz Breakcast. Please like, subscribe, hit the bell at the top for notifications, and follow us on Instagram at Gearhdz Breakcast. Peace, y'all.
Peace.